Hello and welcome. This will be a little prototype of mine, but basically what I'm doing here is I'm going to walk and talk through you how I would go about making a map, getting it into Unity or perhaps Unity into Blender, and then go ahead and get it ready for VRChat. Once that is done, I may also cover optimization, and if you wish to make it relevant to a combat server, similar to how I'm a part of the CTO, you can also see what I do. So, straight away, what I would like to do is I always like to give myself a visual representation or concept. So for this example, I thought fantastic because I've done, uh, when I say I've done maps, I've created maps before where I've actually made simple drawings of my maps. I'm going to quickly find my recent one, which is Operation Cold Splinter, which is now Splinter Cell. For those who played on the map, you probably recognize this. You've got droid base, clone base, and a simple idea, a visual representation of what's going on. Um, Another thing I'm trying to find for us is, for those who probably haven't been there yet, there is Midway. This is the more finished version, but when a player called QB came to me, they submitted draft, like little picture ideas of what they wanted to map to look like, which I will quickly show off now if I can. So main parts, as I mentioned, is we just want to try and get across the idea of what the map wants to look like. In fact, I'll go ahead and do this. I'm not exposing much. So here we are. Simple draw up. Something as simple as just simple shapes to get down the image of what we're trying to achieve is all that we can ask for. So that's kind of what I'm wanting to show you here. Just something as simple as a pencil drawing can expand to bloody heights. So let's just start from the beginning. So here I am. I've got my, well, I've got Photoshop. You can use anything you want, really, anything that you can get a hand of. All I want to do is I just want to get a bird's eye view on what I want the map to be. So, in fact, I'm going to pause and I'm going to try and pull out my very first concept I ever did for Blue Moon. And here we go. So this, for those who don't know, this is my first ever map I made. And this was the simple concept I had. Basically, two... Thanks. Oh, great. I'm going to have to do the whole messeroo. So here we are. So basically, two squares at the side representing bases, and then in the middle for shenanigans. I also represented this little colour change to represent a hill, and then in the corners I wasn't too sure, but I thought since I've been making the development, we'll get there when we get there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the outline first, because I think similar to those who've played Halo, there's the canyon or Blood Gulch. You're surrounded by, hill, and you're absolutely stuck in a canyon of some sort. So I think in a way I also want to mirror this. So I'll probably just make, it's actually looking like a game controller. uh, but nothing's perfect. Just, draw down what you think would be worthwhile. For me, I've got a visual idea that I want people to kind of walk along here, and then we'll just finish off on the base. So, because you're the one making it, it doesn't matter how accurate this needs to be. This is more or less your step, and once you start modeling, once you start building stuff in Unity, you change it to however it needs to be. This could be down to how you visually see it. So straight away, we've got a outline, or in other case, the playable area outline. Now for me, I want to, so let's get the bases in. So straight away, I know that this will be the droid base. Alright, I don't know how big this map's going to be, other than this is the outline. And then we'll go ahead and we'll have the blue base over here. Now, my little idea is that they've got like 3 or 4 different routes that they can do combat in. So what I want to do is I want there to be a opening where they get to go up a hill, similar to how you see it in Blood Gulch, and they get to walk around with no cover. So nice, quick, open area, and they can see. Other than that, I also want it so that I want a somewhat of a elevated hill. So let's use like a dark grey. So once they start moving over, this part here is where things are elevated. So this is the elevated area. This, I think I'm going to make it deeper because I want to actually make a fog similar to how we saw on Yoda's, basically the first introduction of Yoda, where it's all foggy and steamy. That kind of area. I want to create something ominous down here. But moving up here, we've got this. What's going on in here? Well, since we've got a canyon, I thought, why don't we bring it into place? So, layer 2, oh well. Layer 2, we'll just continue. So what I'm thinking of is having a part of that hill slash environment come over and break it up. So what happens here then? So, EI, environment. So, I actually think I want some base going on. So, there's a nice engagement thing going on around here. So, entrance is here, maybe a window to look out of as if it's like a station of some sort. And then, now that I look at this, we'll have it so that people are able to exit through here, and there's a bridge. A bridge that can overlook the fog, as well as access to those who want to rush with no cover and get in. And this whole bridge is completely open up to those who want to look at it. So that might be a happy accident. And actually, you know what? Let's add something else. I think I want it so let's see. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I said I wanted 4, so let's have a look. Why don't we make a cave system? A simple cave. And just like how this is low, this is medium, this is continuously going up as well. So let's have it so that this is a tunnel slash cave system and it gets to go up. It's just that, it just allows you to go around the rear to do flanking. I could open something, but I reckon that'll be down to how I feel once I've made the assets on the map. Because even playtesting could be, oh, you know, this would be cool if you added an extra thing in there. But more or less, looking at this right now, you have an idea. From a bird's eye view, you understand that this is red and blue. Red and blue team. The main focus of the map is here. It also breaks off line of sight. Since this is going to go low into fog, it will kind of stop field of vision as well, so people can move out and not get shot at unless people want to take the risk. And then for those on an elevated surface, they've got no cover, but with the trade-off of that, they get to see the enemies or teammates going up above. And obviously, this being foggy, this could be their sneaky way of infiltrating. And, you know, we've already talked about this. It's going to be a base of some sort. We can go about it. But since the whole map is going to be mirrored, I don't have to worry about stuff too much. Because once I've made maybe a piece of the opener here, then just save it as it is, UV it, and then I can mirror it. So therefore, it's the exact same. So arguably, I've got an idea for a full map, and I just need to do half of it because I can just mirror it, just for consistency and people, you know, be like, oh yeah, it's a fair map, whatever. But there it is. There's my basic idea. So I think what I'll do now is I'm going to go a bit reverse because you guys want to learn stuff. So this is just the concept phase. For Unity, I love using something called the 3D terrain. And in fact, before we even move on, let me show you create a companion. So if you want to make, so let's jump to the chase. So let's say you're like me, you know, you're part of a combat server, and you're using something like pea shooters, a publicly made prefab that you can make for systems and weapons. However, at the same time, if you also want to use Udon, this could be Udon Sharp, Udon Graph, this would be where you want to go because this will put stuff together. So if I was to create this, Udon Sharp right here. So you can create projects through like a little quick pre-install if you like. And then in here you can see here there's also a pick. Right, I will go ahead and just organize this real quick. Okay, so simple as. Project location, yep, give it a name, Mine Base V. Working title for now. A little funny thing as well, for Operation Cold Splinter, it was originally called Tree World because I plan to have so many trees around the area. So, by all means, call it whatever you think could be worthwhile. While that's loading, yeah, this stuff, don't worry about it. As long as you got these main things here, then you're good to go. And then just press Open Project, which will then go ahead. What I'll suggest as well is I would actually save this and export it. Because if there's one thing I've done for Cold Splinter, is that I actually exported the image I showed you earlier, and I used it as an overlay so that I can actually draw the mountains where they need to be, as well as how big the map should be. So yeah, I'll save this and then I'll resume once we're back in Unity. Alright, that took quite a bit of time, and for you lot it'll probably take the same amount. It'll take you a bit of forever to get in here, but it's not a problem. So one thing that I'm not going to lie, I'm quite eager to show and talk to you about is the 3D terrain tool. Not only that, pair that up with the asset store, then you're going to be potentially unstoppable. Because what you could do is that you can make a map in a day. No joke. Even if it's something as simple as just, blocking it out, which we will be doing. Get in some free assets such as, grass, water, maybe some village assets, some actual textures and models. Using the asset store is a complete cheat, at least to me. Why make life easier when you can, find stuff like it? Actually, before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's just go home. So, what I'll do now is I'll go ahead and show you what the big deal's all about. So, 3D terrain tool. So, this is pretty big. However, if I wanted to paintbrush and let's say rise or lower terrain, you'd get a little brush, you can make the brush bigger, you can make the opacity so how strong you wish the brush to be, as you can see here. So that, and you've also got nice brush styles. So let's say for example I'm going to make a hill. The brush is a bit too strong still. Let's go over here. So continuously make hill. Alright. This you can paint on terrain however you like. Not only that, you can paint holes. So similar to the idea about having something in the middle, you can cut in where the mesh will go in. And what you can do then is, let's say for example you want this to be on a certain height. Alright, let's say right. I want to make sure that this is positioned correctly. You can go back to this, press shift, and you can create the holes again. And then be like, yeah. We're just gonna try and make a hole there. There you go. And you can do whatever you want. On top of this, there's also textures, it kind of speaks for itself. Once you got a texture and you get to paint in what you want. Smooth and height, so let's say for example this hill's a bit too rocky for me, I could just do this. Literally, it feels like cheating, I swear to God. Stamp terrain is similar to where you get a bit of information, and once you stamp, i.e. you get the picture of the terrain that you want, you can stamp it in. But that is a bit too complicated and I won't go into it for you. Along here you got plant trees. Once you got the mesh or the prefab for trees, you can go ahead and add a tree. Say, I don't know, how big you want the brush size to be, the density of how many trees, and just the size of them. However, there's mass placed trees, which is probably what you're going to go for. If you want to go really into it, you've got planting brushes, grass, and the details for it. However, before we do anything with the terrain, like I just kind of messed about with, we want to go to options. So, is that 1 up? Yeah, we need to go 0. So, I'll quickly go through the options, and then we'll actually go into making something real quick. So, press shift and click to re-hide the holes, as so. There we go. So, settings. How big is this map? So, let's compare a player height. So, a player height is usually just 2 units high from a y-axis, which is 0, 0, double click where it says cube, and then you'll move your camera to it. So that cube is ridiculously small to the whole map, so we need it much more smaller. So let's have a look. So I like to say maybe 500 player width, maybe. Still a bit too big. Let's go for half that. Maybe a bit too big again. Let's go 150. Yeah, it's looking quite right. And because I want it to be a certain picture, similar to how we try to mess with the cropping, we'll just try and base it off this. I think while I'm at it, I'll just bring in images, and in here I'll just pull in the concept that we made. So for me, in the future, I'll probably suggest making a folder, and then anything you make to do with pictures or images like that, just save it in here so it's nice and neat. So yeah, fantastic. We'll get a plane or a quad, it doesn't matter. Let's have a look here. So by pressing Control, you can be very precise, or you can just go here and just type 90, happy days, 0, 0, 0, and we know that you're there. Press R, or the scale tool, which is up here. So you got grab, move tool, rotation, scale. I'm just going to grab it from the middle and just drag it out like so. Now, because we're in images, because whenever you click and drag something onto a plane, it creates a new folder called materials. And because we don't want to messy up this workspace, because it's going to get really messy with lots of stuff coming in, we're going to try and make our life easier. So, let's rotate this. Forgot the right one. There you go. Let's rotate this round. Let's do something funky. Am I able to do cutout? Alpha channel. There's no such. So if you've got like an actual PNG, because even though it's a PNG, it's still got a white background, so it won't count. Let's make it transparent. You click on the white color, and then where it says A, that's your alpha. Therefore, you can make it as shiny as bright, and this is how we make glass. Obviously, make sure to turn off the smoothers and metallics. So, this here is a nice visual representation of our map, right? Look at that, just bang on. Let's have a look at our cube. So, as a player, if we was to look as a spectator, you know, we're looking down, this is a player. I think this is a bit too small. So, let's increase the size. In fact, is that all correct? Paranoia, one sec. Yeah, okay, cool. What we'll do is we'll go 250, 250, 250. Let's have a look. He feels to come out of his base. There's enough walk room. Again, it's completely down to you. It's your map. For me, I'd like it where once they exit the spawn, it ain't just they're going to get straight into action. If they've got a moment to take a breather, to like basically just mentally prepare themselves, if you like. But it's completely up to you how you wish to do your map. It is no concern, no problem. So let's change this up to 500. Let's see how it looks. Okay, cool. So maybe 250 was the correct size. And what we could do is we'll simply just move you up. The pivot point, or the origin, is this corner right here, where the camera is, where there's my camera. So it's always best to mess around with the settings here because you like to keep stuff 0-0'd. Unless it comes into props, items, stuff like that. That's when it don't matter. Tell stuff 0-0 helps, well, actually, I can't prove that, but think about it. If the game engine uses a single 0-0, then it keeps the whole thing together, compared to, like, there's a fucking prop thousands and thousands of places over there. It's nice just to keep everything in one space. But moving on, let's just go ahead and get this tile sorted out. So 300 maybe. The shortcut to get the move tool, like I've just done there, is the W key. But you could also click up here. So we're just there. So maybe that. Yeah, a bit of wiggle room. It don't matter. However, this arguably is what we're gonna work with. So fantastic. I think I'm gonna set height. So set height is pretty good because you can say, okay, I know that this is gonna go uphill. So let's say 2 or 3 bodies high, it's going to start in this area. So don't worry about it being too accurate because you can always lower the gravity. Sorry, not gravity, always lower it down. So at this point, the hill is going to go higher and it's going to do this. Oh, actually, I'm so sorry if I'm confusing you. So let's get this straight. I want this middle area to go down, which means it's going to have to stay at 0. How further down do it has to be? Well, I think I'd like it so it's... Ooh, yeah, 5 players deep. So, because we're trying to make something go down, it's best to make that ground 0. Which is, as you just noticed, it could be something that can catch you off guard. So, I'm going to simply just paint around. So that's my playable space, and don't worry, we'll fix this by simply just, here's the quad, bring it up. Alright, and then we'll just paint in this part here. Just getting some visual representations. So when the players go into the misty area, let's grab that cube again, let's find out how it looks. So how big is this misty area? It's quite big actually. So let's go a bit smaller. Oh, wrong quad. Let's just go a bit smaller. Alright. And yeah. How about this? Other than me just nitpicking, I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to show you the end result. All I'm going to do is, again, get the middle where it looks satisfying visually, and then I'm going to do the height scale so give you a idea. Okay, I think that'll do. So, here is the change. So if I was to zoom up, you can visually see or get the idea of what I'm getting at. So what I've done as well is I've labelled the cube to be player height and concept being obviously the image that you see below, and I'm going to double click on player height. So obviously things ain't perfect, we're going to start adding stuff later. So as you can tell, this will be where the droid or any spawn is. They'll have that moment. In fact, I can probably push this forward, but this is why we do visualization. There's the little ramp I mentioned earlier where they get to step up, they'll go around the side. In fact, what I could do is I'll get a visual representation, player object align with view, i.e. we're aligning this object to where we're looking, and you can see how big this person is and then along this here. So that has worked out pretty nicely actually. That's not a problem. What you're seeing here is that is unaligned. So this is where they'll start going up a step. So up here they've got the main, and then in the middle here, which I should have done actually, is where the big mountain is, and then this is just continuation. So looking at this, let's get my concept back up a bit higher so we can see what we're doing. So the entry of the building will be here, and then there should be a mountain over here. So I'll quickly do that. What I've done for the surrounding area is I've made it a height of 25. For what the hill should be, since no one's going to see above it other than the spectator, don't worry about how it'll look. And once you're happy with what you've done, you can also go ahead and start smoothing in the edges, probably add a few more bumps, make it less perfect, you know, stuff like you'd expect. So here it is. So once people cross over, they'll have a bridge in the way, and since they should be on the same level, they'll see some fog that's in the way. When they step up here, you know, they'll be in level with this lot and they can actually see across. When they get up to this point where they'll see some windows, that kind of shows what's going on. That should be an opening up there. However, taking this into account, I wonder if this is too much to walk. But yeah. But as you can tell here, what I'm doing, I'm literally seeing how the player is going to look at this. So from the spawn, walking up to here, is this too much walking? Are they too much out of the action to do anything, is what I'm trying to figure out. Because they're going up to that, I mean, don't get me wrong, this could be classed as a small map if I was to knock it down a bit more, but I'd still like the freedom for a lot of players to jump on and have that, you know, big involvement, because it's always nice to have a lot of players, you know, the more the merrier. So, not only that, we can also litter cover around here, control points, all that shenanigans. So, now that I think about it, it'll work, it'll be fine for now. But more or less, you can see what I've done. I've gone from concepts, I've now gone into Unity where I've built the environment to better help give me an image. And on top of that, I've also increased and decreased the concept to my liking. So not only that, but you can also mess around with the playground or the terrain. So for example, if you wanted things to be more thicker, if you want to play about with more stuff, you can definitely do this. Right, moving on. So, before we jump back into anything else, I want to show you the asset store. Oh my goodness, it is such a great thing, I am not kidding you. So, let's say for example you wanted grass textures, yeah? We'll type in grass, right? Press enter. Let's say, or basically you don't want to pay for it. We want to go for our current version, which is 2019, which is at the top left here, Unity 2019 431F1. And straight away you'll notice that you've got some assets you can pick out for free. It doesn't really matter too much. However, if it's free and you want to grab everything, go ahead. But keep in mind, when you download something, that'll go into here. So I'm actually kind of curious of this here, Dream Forestry, because we might actually use this for some trees above us, or even perhaps some cover. Let's have a look. So it'll give us images. You know, they're actually pretty good. I'm going to download these. Let's use this as our first example. So you see an asset you like, you click on download, and you can find this off two places. You can find it where you search it up again and find it, or you can go to My Assets, which is where you'll find all of your downloaded content. And once I've downloaded this tree, I'll open up My Assets so you can see the names of what I've downloaded and you can take it all for yourself. I would encourage it, literally. For those who are going to be joining the dev server, there'll be more going on. I would show it off, but it is in subject to change since we're really doing a big overhaul and new changes with how things are done. So I don't want to confuse you. But if you're in the dev server, if you find any assets online, whether that be in SketchUp or perhaps assets that you made that you want to share, or just generally point stuff out, like I've done for some amazing things that I found on the internet. Actually, let me get one example while that's. Oh, actually, we'll do that. So import. So let's say the asset downloaded is ready. You want to import it. Click import. So as it would do for any other package, it'll say, right, cool, we're getting the package ready, we're decompressing it so you can use it. I've noticed I'm speaking a bit too fast, I'm sorry. Uh, cool. So at this point, we're just waiting for the waiting for the assets to decompile. While we're waiting, I will think, no, fuck it, we'll just continue. So this is the package here. So forest, yep, we've got patch, yep. All the information, processing. Uh, it depends on what you want to do. For me, I'm not too much into processing. It'll look fancy either way because what I'm going to do is I might make a separate video that goes into simple setups of processing. But we'll keep stuff simple. I don't want to overwhelm you too much. So scripts, we're not bothered about that. What's the readme? Shaft, I don't know. If there's anything that you don't recognize or don't understand, don't worry about it, just leave it. Packages, that's in processing. We'll just skip on that. So this is all that we want. Import. And if you remember last time when I said about how this is going to get a bit messy, well, as you will probably see in a moment, once we've downloaded something, it'll put it into the asset project. So once it's finished, I'll go ahead and show you. So there you go, it's done. While we do that, I'm going to click on my assets. So if we go back to assets, you'll find it right here, Dream Forestry. Now it's totally up to you. It's your project. You do what you want. So I'm going to make a folder and I'm going to call it Unity Store Assets, and I'm going to drag it in. Simply anything I downloaded from the Unity Store, I know I can go to one folder and I can go scan and look for it. So in here, let's have a little gander. Let's expose myself. So the VRChat home kit. If you remember the old VRChat home, I thought, a bit sentimental. I might use that for even a spawn. Sci-fi styles, explosions, fire, village, cartoon castle, asset sandbags, not bad. Fantasy chores and castles, yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, why not? So, before I just start downloading everything, I'll just show you what I've got. Some of these could also not work. I know there's also a particle set at the bottom. There we go. This, for me, it's broken. However, because obviously we're using an older version of Unity, it's a bit of a bummer. It might not work, so you might as well go find other stuff like I found the assets above. If you're going to get the terrain simple tools, this, if I may, is humongous. 105 gigabytes, and that's just so you can go really in detail for what you want to do for sculpting, texturing, all that shenanigans. Take it from me. If you're going to do stuff in VRChat, you want to keep stuff as simple and as plain as possible. It's going to be boring, but because of the tools and I say techniques, basically the things that we can do to make it better, it is. And you'd be surprised of how players don't look too much for detail unless they're in the mood for it. Especially when they're in combat, they're more focused about getting to location, helping their friends, and shooting the enemy or achieving the objective. So don't worry about your map being too, we'll say below the standard you wish for it to be. So don't worry. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause. I'm going to download all that I want from here, and we shall resume. Alright, it took me a while, but we're here now. So, let's go ahead and hide the concepts. And so, in here, I've got all of my pieces that I want. Oh, images are not meant to be in there. Yeah, I had quite a lot to mass move. So, right. Oh, one second. Alright, moving on. So, one little thing I was thinking about while we're moving on is when it comes to terrain data, you'll see why this could be more preferable sometimes over making the terrain yourself in Blender. In Blender, you can make it ridiculously low poly. If I was to change my vision to wireframe, you'll notice that there's a lot of polygons going on. Simply be. When it comes to, very nice flat surfaces like this, it's fine. If I was to set height 0, Will this not? Ah. So as you can probably tell, it works off squares. If the square is nice and flat, it'll just summarize. If it's been edited, it'll then do its stuff. However, don't worry, there is a little thing that we can do, which I'll show you later on. So, without editing that, we'll go back to shaded. So, let's say you got your assets, we want to start painting stuff. Let's obviously get some stuff on the go. Now, one little mention is because since this has been made, it'll make a terrain asset here. If you save and you did some editing, this will no longer be the same. Sorry, let me re-explain. So, if you save and then do something, it'll always remain saved. If the game crashes, it'll always remain, because this holds the data for this 3D software here. You can attempt to copy and paste, however, whatever you do, it'll be the same because they use the same data. So let's see if I'm right. If not, I'm chatting not. So forget rid of. Oh, there we go. So right now I'm just clearing it all. You can see on the left hand side it's completely done. So Control Z, so it's all back together. There you go. So be careful what you do. Let's get on with what I'm meant to do. So paint textures. So to add to add textures and layers and stuff like that, you'll have to go over to the terrain layer and click on this here. Here you can add an already existing texture. This could be from other projects. So if I click on it, for example, it's remembered my grass, it's remembered my dirt, and it's also remembered basically just much more things. I want the rocky floor. So let's say you haven't got any of that. You'd create layer, and what you'd do is, let's say for example, grass. You know, you'd go find it. Which grass haven't we got yet? That looks alright. So double click on it and you'll gain it. Now, as you can probably tell down here, if the grass you're using has some more detail, for example, you know, I've clicked on here, I clicked on this, and it's like, oh look, there's some more details. You can put the normal mask on. You can put, I think this is the map mask. Let's have a look. That is the height. That is spectacular, and that is the occlusion. So I'm not going to bend over backwards because, you know, it is what it is. So let's just let's put this on the ground. So as you can probably tell from painting, you can also paint textures. By the opacity, you can also lightly paint it on. So I'm just going to drag it along. You can see it's trying to catch up, but yeah, you get the idea. This is very nice. Looking at this, you can tell the thing has been stretched because when I set height, I did it with a pretty rough opacity. So what we're going to do is we can go to smooth and height, we can turn this up, and what we can do is that we can just click on it. And what it'll do is it'll make a curve, like how you can see here. It's making the curve to help with the pixels. Doing it on the rough corners, you know, needless to say, oh look at that, it looks very good. So what you can do is make your brush ridiculously big and just cover the whole map. Now, for me, I put this stuff up. Yeah, I wasn't really thinking about it at first, but when you do your mountains, do what I've done at the back here, where it's nice and thick. Where if you have small ones, it's going to take the small, it's going to really curve them in. But again, this is why we're learning from my mistakes anyway. So more or less, that's how you do it. To help yourself, yeah. For example, I'm going to grab here. Yeah, it's remembered stuff. It's remembered stuff. It's remembered stuff. Happy days. So what I'd suggest, in fact, no, I won't go into it. We'll get to the end where it comes to optimization, where you click on the grass, and you'll also change the height. Sorry, not height, the size. But don't worry about it. At this point, I want you to just understand what it is that we can do and have fun making stuff. Because I want you guys to just have that freedom. Do not worry about limitations or anything. In any case, this is just a map for you. It doesn't have to be combat. It doesn't have to be whatever. It's all for fun. So let's move on. So at this point, you know how to do textures. With my rocky surface, I'm going to go ahead and just start, you know, maybe paint a bit of the mountain however I like. And then maybe when it gets to a bit of dirt, lower the opacity, make it a bit more dirtier. It looks trash, but obviously I'm just rushing just to show you what's going on. So, what about trees? So, as mentioned before, in your Unity store, you can go to where you got your foliage, your models, and look at that. You can choose what you like. So, how do you add trees? You go to edit trees and you add. The idea is that it'll ask you, oh yeah, what's the prefab? So one little important thing to mention, if you want trees to be solid, you need to be careful. So for example, I've just dragged a tree from this prefab and I've just planted them in just now. So one main thing to mention is that these trees ain't solid. So if I bring this in, right now in the components there's only a mesh renderer and a material. So you need a mesh collider. And at this point it'll make the whole tree, you know, a mesh. And because it's not a convex, it'll like literally the leaves are solid and whatnot. However, if you want to do what I've done for my trees, I prefer to have just the tree stump or just the tree itself be it. So I'll go as far as to get a cylinder, and because we've right clicked on the object as it's selected, it'll parent it. With the cylinder, what we can do is we can press the R key, which goes to scaling, and by simply just scaling it up, pretty easy, right? And what we can do now is using the scale tool again, we can use the blue to bring it in, use the red to bring it in, and there you go. And what we could do now is where it says mesh renderer, if you untick it, it'll hide it. We could also remove it, you know, but what we could do actually, create empty world ID, so you know where to go find it. Avatar, no you're not, we're going to go for scene descriptor. The spawns is the ID, that's fine, and we're going to put it exactly where I'm looking. And just to give this tree a little test, I'm going to see if it's solid. So one moment. In fact, let's see how it is since there's no unique things going on. It's just a mesh, it's just a train in here. It should be fine. So all I'm doing is I'm doing a quick test to see that this is solid. And I can't go for it. I can put my head in it, which means I need to make it thicker. That's fine. This has proven me that this is now worthy. Press the escape key and press exit play mode. So, fantastic. Once, oh, this is the thing now. Now you need to get the mesh renderer back on because I can't see what I'm doing. Even so, the element of what it's meant to be rendering is gone. So, yeah. Don't worry about the mesh rendering compact because if it's unticked, it won't show. It ain't a problem. So I'm just going to start again. And fortunately for me, I can just paste, and then I'm going to do this where it's solid enough where, you know, that looks fair, right? They're not going to be jumping or shooting above the tree. It's fine. So I'm going to take that away. So I'm going to call this, and I'm going to put C at the end. V capital C. This is just to tell me that this has a collider on it. So when I go back to set up my trees, I can click on this tree, edit, I can remove it, and then add a tree, click in the C, and now every time I plant a tree, that is going to have the collider to make our lives easier. You've also would have noticed that for the prefab, say for example the trees are too big, Dreamer, we need to change the trees. Go to the prefab that you wish to have, double click on it so you're in here. What you could do is, like before, you get a cube, make it 2, make that your reference. It's always best to know how high something is. So, tree too big. What you could do is simply scale it down. You know what? Just to make life easy. Again, I know I'm doing a lot here, but it's always good practice to reinforce what you're doing so you're not just winging it. So there you go. That's the floor. And that's going to move into it. That is okay, cool. So I'm sorry. Alright, basically, grab the plane, bring it a bit smaller, remove the cube. This needs to be touching the floor, which we can't remember. You know, let's just save. Let's not kid ourselves. Let's just save and see what happens. So let's get this. Paint trees. Is it touching the ground? It is. Okay, so we don't have to worry about it. So you can go through the prefab and you can sort it out. Dreamer, I planted trees, but I want to get rid of them. If you look at the right here, it says to click to plant trees. Hold shift to erase trees while you click. And then control click to, yeah, you get the idea. Because that's a prefab around, we can just delete it. Easy peasy. So that's how you do trees. The mash trees, this is going to be fun. So you got to select a tree that you want to paint. In fact, no, sorry. Once you've added all the trees you wish to use, and you want to randomly mass plant them, you can use this. As you can tell there, it says keep existing trees, so you can plant and plant again. Or if you want to replace what's there, you can just click this, which will replace them. So let's just click this. Let's be funny. Holy moly, there's a lot of trees. As you would have gathered, if there's enough room, it'll plant the tree. If not, it won't. What we could do here is, say for example, I wanted an X amount of trees on the surface. So plant mass trees, I just want maybe 2,000. And the idea for the 2,000 is that I want, oops, I'm being an idiot. Let's say for example, on the top of the canyon, I want a few trees, right? I could do this, shift click, get rid of all the trees outside because they're never going to be seen. You might as well save up on the resource. And then obviously get rid of all the trees inside. So that when people look up and they'll see a bit of trees, you know, oh yeah, sure. But it's whatever. It's completely down to you. For me, I just want a blank slate, so I'm going to press 0. Do not keep existing trees. Boom, it's all gone. And then I can start painting stuff if I want. Moving on. There's this. Now, I haven't used this too much because with me mainly doing combat maps, I want to optimize things. And to have trees and grass, it ain't a problem. It's only when you come down to using the trickery of level of detail and just the amount of going on. Just as we said before, with how there's pixels going on, and even when you zoom out, I've just realised when you zoom out, it's shortening the stuff, so that's pretty good. So here, same again. You can scroll down to where it says details. You can add a grass or detail mesh. A detail mesh is what we want. And similar before, what we want to do is look for a plant. So in our assets, what can we find? Bush, fantastic example. Let's just use a bush. So add that in. Let's increase the brush. I'm a click. So that's quite messy. So opacity and target. This is probably where I needed to do some more practice. Alright, cool. So as you can tell, there's a bit of a mess aroundy. Brush size. What if I just did 1? I think the prefab is that it's really big. Anyway, you may reduce PC draw overcoming. Yep, that's fine. So I'll remove it. I'm not a fan of grass, and I'd rather place it in so that when people go into on it and trigger, it can just spawn. So let's. You know what? Actually, I'll say this is probably a good place to pause real quick. So what we're going to do now is we've got the world. It's painted. We've got it how it like. There is a thing that we can bring into place. There is a little script that we can bring in which can export the 3D mesh in front of us, and we can actually bring it into Blender with us. The idea, if I can just find the file, excuse me, I'm not very prepared. Oh, dreamy, you suck. In fact, how about this? I'll pause it and then I'll show you the gag. Alright then, here we are. So before I actually show it off, for those who are curious, again, it's by this person on GitHub, Terrain Exporter. As you can see here, you can take this information, make it into an OBJ, and you can export it to whatever you like. So that's all I'm going to be doing. So what I've done is, I've gone and done that there. The code is right there. I'm going to make a new folder called downloaded assets. Make it nice and tidy. And when you drag this in, it'll ask if you want to make a backup of your project. The reason why is because it's actually added a new tab. So at the top here, there'll be a new tab called Terrain, and quite literally export OBJ. So I'm going to click on this, Terrain, OBJ, resolution. Do you want the full resolution? Well, since I'm just wanting to use this as a reference in Blender, I don't really care too much. So I want at least a quarter. And, triangles, quarters, it's completely up to you. Assets, let's just call this, in fact no, we'll call it what it is. Minor base v terrain, save. And that's going to save right here. Oh yeah, I've just noticed a new layer. You know what, because that has been used from Unity, still put in there. So, at this point, I've shown you how to do concept. I've shown you the benefit of bringing that concept in to better help visually create your map. I've also shown you how to use the Unity terrain. I've also shown you to do paint plus. Oh, for those who are curious about this, create neighboring tiles. Now what it does is it'll take the data you've made and it'll copy. And what you could do is, if you wanted to create a big environment, you could do this. Um, However, for us, we're not too interested because you're going to be stuck in the canyon, you won't see. Um, I am slowly running out of time for this little session, so what I'll do is I'm going to show you why. So there's the question of, do I make everything a single object and then export it into Unity, or is it fine to have individual objects and go from there? Well, I don't know if you've heard me talk about this before, but there's a thing called occlusion cunning. So if I was to put the camera here, and let's go to, so for you, you go to Window, you go to Rendering, and you'll find occlusion cunning. On the right hand side, or wherever you wish, you'll have Object, Bake, and Visualization. I think, other than me explaining it, I'll go ahead and show you. So, without messing around with the settings, I'm going to just bake it. You'll notice there's some cubes. Now, have you noticed how the map has started to despawn? If I was to turn on visibility lines? No. Portals. Basically, camera volumes I think will do, yeah. So, occlusion cunning, what it does is it takes meshes or objects you can't see and it'll despawn them. The idea is, if you had a world which had, like, take for example Operation Splinter. In fact, I'll even load it up if I had a bit more time to show you what the example is. The point is, if you have a lot of objects in the world, say for example there's players, there's cubes, there's items, all sorts of shenanigans behind this hill. And for optimization's sake, you don't need to see that right now because your camera could be back at base, it could be going up to the counter or the assault up here. As you can tell, this will get rid of stuff. Another thing to mention is that these little cubes here. Now within a big cube, as you can tell here, there's one big cube and more smaller cubes. They kind of help define or get more information about what's trying to be rendered or shown. So you can probably tell what's going on here. The hill is starting to go up and it's starting to add more boxes to help represent when that starts to go up. And if we were to go to bake, the smallest occur, call it 1, I think this will go oppositely. So if you really want to be nitpicky, like say, right, I want a more focused, a more accurate representation of when the camera cannot see. As you can tell, the camera's POV, which is the white square box which is going outwards, whatever that sees, it'll render. And because when we go into VRChat, we've got 2 cameras in our eyes, which is why it's very important, why we want less is more. Not only that, but as you can probably tell as well, when you're trying to render stuff constantly, it can get really annoying. On top of that, again, I'll just flex off this a little bit as well. Because we try to make the map as small as we could, naturally, not really ridiculously perfect, but small enough where any access data is just useless. Just like how, if we was to turn off volume box real quick. So just like how we got this dead space out here, we're not using it. It'll probably be half of that because we're going to make a bigger hill to make this look much more. Hell, we might even hide a spawn room somewhere. But even so, I have now made a bigger box and I now want to see the visualization. So this thing should be more accurate, or at least I hope so. So let's just go to the camera real quick. Let's put you on, let's put you on the player height real quick. And let's 0, 0 your information. So the player is this cube, alright? So go back here, visualization. So wherever the cube goes, the player goes. And straight away, boom. You can tell from just him looking, or her looking from this direction, it's only going to be rendering this. And if they else to turn around, it's much more accurate, less stuff is getting spawned. So this is the beauty of occlusion cunning. And as you can tell at the bottom there, it's got 3.8 for such a simplistic map. But don't worry about it. But this is just the art of 2 things. So if you're like me nowadays, I like to be much more free and I just want to be more messy with how I want to put assets in. I want to be able to throw something in. If it doesn't work, I'll delete it and nothing else will be hindered. If you now go into Blender and you start making objects and you make it one whole thing, there is a benefit. Similar to how you see the hierarchy, here's how I remember it. The more stuff in the hierarchy, the more the server has to do a checklist or a to-do list. Say, okay, we're now loading up a map. Well, we've got to do this. Okay, what's next? We've got to render this object. Okay. And it'll keep going, keep going, keep going. Which is why things can get more bigger in size because they're taken on different instances. No different to how when you go to the Meet Up Portal world and there's so many players, the amount of players there is like the amount of stuff in the hierarchy. Now, don't get discouraged. This doesn't mean that we have to really, do as much optimization as possible. It's when it comes to basically just what's getting shown. The amount of vertices, the amount of data, or the texture, memory, all that kind of shenanigans that you've kind of been there, done that for. It's mainly for that. But if you want to keep a map really optimized and low poly, I'd definitely suggest doing your material slots right and exploit all as a big mesh. Because this terrain is using lots of polygons, and since the occlusion cutting, as you just saw there, it's doing a nice job of just trying to, use the mesh to the best of its ability and not hide/remove anything. So I'm quite happy to keep this as my base of what I want to build the map on. And as I said before, with Unity assets, let's find sandbags, fucking drag these in, it doesn't matter, you know. You can do whatever you want. And then when it comes to wanting to visualize, yeah. Now I've told this to clear baking data, so it's not going to show. But nevertheless, I'll just be hammering home. As soon as I bake here, I can turn around and look. Oh look, the sandbags are gone because the player can't see it. Similar to if they walk towards it, behind it, whatever. You get the point. So yeah, if you want to do it like me, where it's more quicker to the point, you can easily make a map with just random assets you find online and just create a very basic block out. Talk about blockouts, let me do just that. So one thing I've told people to do is first do a concept, two, if they're going to do what I'm doing here, great, build the world with the concept and then do a blockout. So I'm going to create a new object, I'm going to make this my folder, blocks. Alright, I'm going to 0, 0, 0 because this is a folder, I don't want this to be manipulated. So in here, when I create an object, it'll go back to the 0, 0. Therefore nothing's manipulated, because if I told blocks to be here, and if I was to create a new block, it'll create it tilted. So we want to make sure that this is absolutely not manipulated at all. So for the block, my apologies, I'm simply going to represent these as bases, and then maybe do one for the bridge, maybe a big block to show where a piece of the base will be. Just that kind of the idea. Because what we're trying to do now is, just like we did earlier with how we're trying to build the map, we're trying to get more visual aids to help us. Instead of going through Blender, we're using Unity to the best of our ability to get what information we can. And right now, I'm having a pivot point issue. There's a way to outdo this, but I always forget because I'm always here fixing stuff and making stuff nowadays. So, as per basically, get rid of that. I want a new cube. Bugger. Let me have my cube. Oh, I don't want to mess about just trying to fix the pivot point. Whatever. So, make a duplicate. Let's just put it into place. So, I know for sure that up here is the entrance to when they'll attack. Here is probably where... Oh my goodness, yeah, this pivot point's going to be real. Hey, there we go. So, building here where people start to enter. You got a nice window here, which will allow people to be sneaky and look out of, and obviously people can look in. And then we want a bridge. Here we go. Pivot point, why you do this to me? I hate you. Let's see, where... Ah, when I smooth in the world, it also brought this out of place. That's fine. Again, this is why you take time. Well, I say take time. You'd go into this and you'd pay attention to bits and bobs. So the height was probably around there, I'd say. So yeah, you bring it out, do whatever. And therefore, when you go into here, you can paint a hole. There you go. And then next time you go into Blender, you'd export where the holes are, and you can use that as your visual aid to say, right, I need to put something here because there's a hole there. And then once you want to build the interior, you can just, in Blender, just hide it and just try and map out where things are. It's up to you. It's completely up to you, honestly. It's all up to you how you wish to do it. But this is just my approach. And then obviously we said there'll be a cave entrance here, and because we can model this, we can push this up indefinite, all the way over. But it's completely up to us. Or by us, I mean it's up to you. But yeah, there you go. That'll be... I'm not going to make different videos. I'm going to attach it together. But more or less, I hope this has been a great aid. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over to Blender. I'm going to take this with me, and then we'll look into maybe doing a simple object like a door frame, or me going into actually making an interior. But yeah, thank you for watching so far.